Watch the kids tonight, will you? We have plans. The moment my mother said those words, standing in the doorway of the living room, my thoughts froze. In the center of the room, where Christmas songs were softly playing, she spoke like a queen granting an audience in her own castle. Beside her, my sister curled her lips and added, "It's not like you have plans anyway, right?" Why were they here? And why were my 5 nieces and nephews running wild in the house I know I locked before leaving? Snacks were scattered all over the floor. On the sofa, my 7 and 5-year-old nephews were wrestling as if they were in a ring. My 6-year-old niece was shaking the antique snow globe I had treasured for years, while the 3-year-old had begun scribbling on the wall with crayons. The youngest, barely a year old, was cheering them all on with delight. My beloved fiancé, Steve, the Christmas tree he had so lovingly decorated, was flickering weakly, as if begging for help. I had just come home from a trip to find antique tableware for a gourmet magazine feature, still holding the beautiful cutlery set I'd bought as a surprise gift for him. All I could do was stand there, frozen, staring at the impossible scene before me. Only a few days ago, this house had been full of hope and joy. I had no idea then that tragedy was waiting just around the corner. It was supposed to be our first Christmas together. Just Steve and me. We'd laughed like children as we hung ornaments full of memories on the tall fir tree and placed hand-knit stockings above the fireplace. Steve, a chef at a famous restaurant, loved planning the Christmas dinner menu with me. Those moments together were pure happiness. This year's turkey will be special. I'm using a secret blend of herbs. I want your parents to try it someday too, he said with that gentle smile that always made me feel he was my true family. That weekend, we went shopping for a gift to bring to Steve's parents' house. We found a bottle of vintage red wine, one his father had been searching for years. It wasn't cheap, but we didn't hesitate. We wanted to see his father's face light up. "I can't wait to give this to him," Steve said, holding the bottle carefully. Seeing his smile, I couldn't help smiling too. That peaceful, fulfilling time was everything I had ever wished for. But that night, my phone lit up ominously. A message from my sister. "Got plans for Christmas?" Short and blunt. I took a breath and replied, "I'll be spending it with Steve's family." It was read instantly, but no reply came. I didn't know then that it was the calm before the storm. Looking back, there had been warning signs. It was about 2 months ago when my mother came over for a visit. In the middle of a casual chat, she said, "Hey, just in case something happens, why don't I keep a spare key to your house? You can be forgetful sometimes, and it'd be a problem if you locked yourself out." I politely but firmly declined. "It's fine. Steve has a key too, so you don't have to worry." My mother looked slightly displeased and said, "Well, if you're fine with it, then I suppose that's all right." At the time, I thought that was the end of the conversation. Then last month, during plumbing repairs in my apartment, I couldn't take time off work to supervise the contractors. So I asked my mother, who lived nearby, to hold on to my key and handle it for me. Of course, she returned the key later that day. I never imagined that in those few hours she would betray my trust. Behind that helpful smile, she had hidden something far darker. I didn't yet realize that my mother now saw my home as a kind of second house, a place she could use whenever it suited her. "Why are you in my house?" I managed to ask, my voice trembling. My mother took something out of her handbag and I heard a small click. It was a familiar object, but one that should never have been there. The key to my house. "When you lent it to me before, I had a copy made. It's just more convenient this way. Saves me the trouble of asking every time." She spoke without a hint of guilt, reapplying her party gloss in the mirror. The moment I heard those words, something inside me snapped. My eyes dropped to the floor, to the enormous red stains spreading across the white carpet. Shards of glass glimmered in the middle, their label all too familiar. It was the vintage wine, the precious bottle Steve and I had chosen together for his father. "Oh, that?" "The kids knocked it over while running around," my mother said without even turning around. "You know how kids are." My sister, taking cheese from the fridge, snorted. "Yeah, exactly. Don't make such a big deal out of it. You're not busy anyway, right? We've got a party to get to, so be a dear and clean this up, will you?" Her irresponsibly casual words made me ask quietly, "Why me? Your children did this. Shouldn't you be the ones to clean it up?" My sister sighed dramatically, as if I were being unbearably annoying. "Oh, come on. Don't be so uptight. We're family. You could at least do that much. Honestly, you're useless. That was the final straw. The countless tiny thorns I had buried deep inside over the years fused into one massive flame of anger that burned through me. I gently set the gift for Steve down on the floor and took my phone out of my pocket. There was no reason to hesitate anymore. The shift had started 3 years ago, on our anniversary. Just before heading to the restaurant Steve had reserved, my sister called, crying, "Please, I've got an emergency at work." I had gathered the courage to say no for once. "I'm sorry, I can't tonight. I told you, it's an important night for me and Steve. Please, my job's on the line, just for a few hours. Come on, kind Steve would understand, wouldn't he?" She knew exactly how to twist guilt into a weapon, even dragging Steve into it. And so, heavy-hearted, I gave in. When I called Steve to cancel, he didn't get angry. He worried about me instead. An hour later, the doorbell rang. There he was, smiling, holding a whole cake in his hands. "I couldn't enjoy dinner at a fancy restaurant knowing you were home alone taking care of the kids," he said softly. That night, he helped me look after them without a single complaint. But after the kids had fallen asleep, I opened social media and froze. There was my sister, laughing and posing with her friends at a stylish bar. Her urgent work had been a blatant lie. When I called to confront her, she snapped back. "I have to keep up with people too. What, I'm not allowed to relax once in a while?" Her selfishness left me speechless. Sometime later, on a weekend, she showed up again. "I'm going away for a friend's wedding. Keep the kids for me." And before I could protest, she was gone. Seeing my frustration, Steve said gently, "Then let's make it the best weekend ever for them." His kindness saved me. We took all 5 kids to a big amusement park. Steve was like a real father, laughing, shouting on roller coasters, his joy echoing with the children's laughter under the blue sky. That afternoon, while riding the carousel, my 6-year-old niece said softly but happily, "Hey, Auntie, I've been here before. With Dad." Her 7-year-old brother chimed in excitedly, "Yeah, Dad won the biggest stuffed animal at the shooting game. He was so strong and kind." Their innocent words pierced my heart. The loving father they remembered was nothing like the man who abandoned them my sister had described. That night, after the kids had gone to bed, Steve said gently, "You know, maybe you should try reaching out to your sister's ex-husband." "Eric?" I remember replying, startled. "The way the kids talk about him, he doesn't sound like someone who'd just walk away." I nodded, feeling the same. "Yes, I want to. But how? She's deleted all his contacts. I have no way of reaching him." Frustrated, I bit my lip. Just then, my sleepy little niece toddled over and wrapped her tiny arms around me. "Auntie, I love you." Feeling her warmth, I made a silent vow. I would find a way to protect her smile, no matter what. But at that time, with Eric completely blocked from our lives, I could only stand there, helpless. "Hey, how long are you going to just stand there? Clean this up already." My mother's sharp voice jolted me back to reality. Broken glass, scattered toys, and the scornful faces of my mother and sister. My fingers, unnaturally calm, moved across my phone screen. The chains of guilt and misplaced affection that had bound me for years shattered at last, leaving behind only a quiet, icy anger. The first contact I opened was that of my beloved fiancé, Steve. He was at his parents' house, helping prepare for the Christmas party tonight. With trembling fingers, I typed, "I'm sorry, please cancel the plans. My mother and sister showed up. They used a spare key to get in. The wine we bought for your father? It's broken." Almost instantly, my phone rang. "Are you okay?" "Forget the wine. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine, but I've decided I'm not holding back anymore." "Good, you shouldn't. You've done nothing wrong. Listen, stay calm. I'm coming right now. Don't try to handle this alone, okay?" That strong, steady voice of Steve's gave me the final push I needed. After ending the call, I slowly lifted my head and looked straight at my mother and sister. "What, did you go crying to Steve? How pathetic." My sister snorted. "So what? Then hurry up and get dinner ready. We don't have all night." My voice was calm but firm. "No." For a moment, silence. They both stared at me as if they couldn't comprehend what I'd just said. "I'm not making dinner, and I'm not taking care of your kids." "What? Do you even know what you're saying?" my sister stammered. "Yes, I do. So take your children and leave this house. Now, you're trespassing. At my words, the smiles finally vanished from their faces, replaced by shock and anger. Trespassing? How dare you talk to your own mother like that? To your sister? My mother shrieked, hysterical. This might be your house, but it's still part of the family's home. Exactly. You're seriously freaking out over a spare key? You don't even notice your nephews and nieces are hungry? My sister continued. They were both fuming now, closing in on me, their anger twisting into something ugly. My 7-year-old nephew, caught up in the tension, laughed and shouted, "Go get her, Mom!" I stepped back, but I didn't look away. Steve is coming. That belief alone kept me standing firm. Enough. My mother reached out to grab my arm. And in that instant, the front door burst open. Steve's clear, commanding voice cut through the air. "Don't you dare touch her." Behind him stood 2 police officers, broad-shouldered and stern-faced. It turned out that after hanging up, Steve had immediately called the police. He must have told them everything I'd said, about the copied key, the forced entry, the broken wine, and above all, their plan to abandon the children here and leave. "Why are the police here?" One of the officers fixed them with a sharp gaze. "We received a call from Steve. He reported unauthorized entry using a copied key, destruction of valuable property, a vintage bottle of wine, and possible child neglect, given your stated intent to leave the children unattended. Would you care to explain?" The officer's tone was calm, but it left no room to run. My mother and sister went pale. Their bravado vanished. They just stood there, mouths opening and closing like fish. It would have been funny if it hadn't been so pathetic. After a long silence, one officer looked toward the confused children and asked gently, "Kids, where's your father?" The oldest boy, my 7-year-old nephew, glanced nervously at his mother and said, "Mom and Dad got divorced. Dad's really busy at work. He doesn't like us anymore. He doesn't want to see us." His small voice, so earnest yet so clearly coached, chilled the entire room. My sister quickly jumped in. "Yes, that's right. My ex-husband's work kept him so busy that we drifted apart. He's been distant from the children." She spoke like a tragic heroine, and I bit down hard on my lip to stop the fury rising inside me. Steve gently placed his hand on my shoulder, but then my 6-year-old niece spoke up, her voice bright and innocent. "But Daddy was really nice. He always took us to the park on his days off." "Yeah, Daddy always made us laugh." One after another, the children began sharing their memories. Memories of a loving father, nothing like the cold figure my sister had described. And then came the final devastating blow. "Mom always said, 'Daddy's here, so I'm going out to have fun.' She was never home." A pure, innocent confession. In that instant, the truth was laid bare for everyone to see. While my sister had blamed her ex-husband's busy schedule for the divorce, she had been the one out partying, leaving the kids in his care. Her face flushed crimson, this time with anger and humiliation. "They're just confused, mixing things up with work," she stammered. But no one was listening anymore. The moment I heard my sister's pathetic excuse, a question I had buried deep inside for years, one I had sworn never to voice, burst out of me like a broken dam. My voice came out cold as ice. "Tell me something. If your freedom, your time, your nights out means so much to you, then why did you have 5 children?" My words cut through the air like a blade of ice. My mother, the police officers, even Steve, all of them held their breath, waiting for my sister's answer. I looked straight into her trembling eyes and continued, my voice cold but steady. "What were those children to you? Chains to tie Eric to the house because he was too busy with work? Or maybe just accessories for your social media? Hashtags like supermom of 5 to get a few more likes?" Her face twisted, contorted by rage and humiliation. "What the hell gives you the right to talk to me like that? You have no idea what it's like. Once a woman has kids, she loses her freedom. But you, Miss Perfect Single Life, you wouldn't understand that, would you?" Ah, so that's what it was after all. To her, those children weren't beings to love. They were props, tools to decorate her life or to shackle her husband. That ugly truth made me feel something beyond anger. It was despair. Deep, hollow despair. Then she spat out the rot festering inside her heart. "It's all your fault anyway. You've always been there to clean up my mess. I thought, oh well, big sister will take care of it. You spoiled me. You made me like this. Even the officers looked disgusted by her selfish, twisted logic. Then, as if to cut through the suffocating air, Steve quietly moved. He went to the kitchen, warmed up milk and chocolate, and poured sweet hot cocoa into cups. He handed one gently to each of the children, whose faces were pale and tear-streaked. Here, drink this and warm up. Don't worry, your dad hasn't forgotten about you. Not for a second. His calm, confident kindness lit a faint spark of hope in their eyes. That small, tender moment felt like the only light in the chaos of that living room. But Steve's compassion was the final spark that burned away the last thread of restraint my sister had left. What do you know about any of this? She screamed, her face twisted with fury. Don't act like you understand. He abandoned them. He doesn't even pay child support, and he said he never wants to see them again. Her shouting made the youngest child burst into tears, and she immediately turned her anger back toward me. This is all your fault. You're always so damn perfect. Then, like a dam breaking, she began pouring out her self-pity, her voice trembling with rage and grief twisted into something grotesque. Eric stopped loving me a long time ago. When we first got married, his eyes were always on me. But after the kids were born, everything changed. They took everything. Even on his days off, he spent all his time with them instead of me. I just wanted him to look at me again. To love me again. Her self-centered cry echoed through the living room, and just as it did, the doorbell chimed. A light, almost cheerful ding-dong that didn't belong in that heavy silence. Steve went to open the door. Standing there, breathless and clutching 5 big gift boxes in his arms, was a man. My sister's ex-husband, Eric. He had come rushing over after getting Steve's call, having already pieced together what was happening. In truth, ever since that day 3 years ago, I had quietly tracked down his social media account, and a few months ago, we'd started exchanging messages in secret. I'd never given up on our promise, to one day find a way forward for the children. And now, Eric had heard every word of my sister's final outburst from just outside the door. Who said I abandoned my kids? His voice was quiet, but it carried a weight that froze everyone in the room. After receiving Steve's call and realizing everything, he rushed over at that very moment. The first to react were the children. The 7-year-old boy who had been at the center of the chaos gasped, eyes wide and filled with tears. Dad? The boxes tumbled from Eric's arms as 5 small bodies rushed toward him all at once. Daddy, Daddy! They clung to his legs, sobbing uncontrollably, a sight both beautiful and unbearably painful. The eldest boy looked up through his tears, his voice trembling with a question he had been holding on to for far too long. Dad, why didn't you come see us? Mom said you didn't love us anymore, that you didn't want to see us. In that instant, all the color drained from Eric's face. His voice shook as he spoke. That's not true, not for a second. I've always wanted to see you. I've been sending child support every month for all of you. Those words struck like a blade. Undeniable, final proof. She had been taking the money, while poisoning their hearts against their father, breaking the bond between them for her own selfish convenience. There were no excuses left. All her lies, all her cruelty, laid bare before everyone on that holy Christmas night. My mother and sister stood there, frozen, pale as ghosts, as if time itself had stopped. The living room was filled with the sound of children's muffled sobs, and the quiet, simmering fury of their father, Eric. One of the police officers, who had been watching the heartbreaking scene unfold, finally turned to my mother and sister and spoke firmly. We understand the situation. We'll need both of you to come with us to the station. We have to discuss the matters of unlawful entry, property damage, and possible child neglect. My mother could no longer argue. Her knees gave way, and she slumped to the floor, her head bowed in defeat. The last thing she saw before being led away was the image of her grandchildren, safe in their father's arms, sipping the hot cocoa Steve had made for them. That sight alone said everything. It was the undeniable proof of their complete defeat as mothers. After my mother and sister left with the police, the living room was filled with a strange atmosphere, a mix of awkward silence and quiet relief. The children, who had been the center of so much turmoil, were now safely nestled against their father's chest, sniffling softly but finally at peace. Eric gently stroked each child's head and then looked up at Steve and me with deep remorse. I'm so sorry, and thank you. If it weren't for you, I might never have known the truth. Don't apologize. You and the kids didn't do anything wrong. Those words, along with the sweet aroma of the cocoa Steve had just made fresh, slowly began to melt the frozen air in the room. Then my 6-year-old niece cupped her mug in both hands and murmured quietly, "Auntie, your cocoa tastes better than Mommy's." The words hit me like a gentle ache. Those children had always known, deep down, where real love came from. The next day, I received a call from the police. The security camera footage had provided undeniable evidence of my mother and sister's unlawful entry and property damage. On top of that, the allegations of child neglect were serious enough that they were formally arrested that very night. Normally, in cases like this, the children would be taken into temporary custody by child welfare services. But Eric immediately offered to take full responsibility and, through his lawyer, arranged the necessary paperwork within hours. Because of his quick action, the children were spared the trauma of being sent to a shelter. Within days, Eric filed an emergency petition in family court, and the custody of all 5 children was officially transferred to him. He decided to scale back his work and start a new life focused entirely on raising his kids. That weekend, Steve and I watched them leave for their new home, with smiles on our faces and tears in our eyes. The heavy chains that had bound my shoulders for so many years were finally gone. And a year later, under a canopy of blossoms, Steve and I held a small, intimate wedding ceremony. The following year, our first son was born. Healthy, bright, and full of life. Now, on some weekends, Eric, his 5 children, Steve, and I take picnics together in the park. What you see there are not 2 broken families, but 2 new ones, bound by forgiveness, resilience, and love. I had finally escaped the long years of exploitation, and together with Steve, I opened the door to a life of quiet, genuine happiness. As for my mother and sister, I only heard about them occasionally, through whispers from mutual acquaintances. All the child support money Eric had sent, money that should have been used for the children, had been wasted on my sister's indulgent lifestyle and my mother's social outings. When that stream of easy money stopped, their comfortable world collapsed overnight. My sister, who had never held a steady job, struggled to find full-time work. I heard she now juggles several part-time jobs just to afford rent. My mother, unable to rely on her anymore, had also started working, stocking shelves at a supermarket despite her age. You could call it karma and leave it at that. But even after hearing the story, my heart felt strangely heavy. I simply accepted it quietly. The inevitable reality waiting at the end of the path they themselves had chosen. It was around that time, when they were both beginning to face that harsh reality, that I received a message on my phone. It was from my mother. The screen displayed a single, short line. "How are you?" It was the first contact since that night. I hesitated, unsure how to respond, and showed the message to Steve. He smiled gently and said, "Do what your heart tells you." I took a deep breath and typed my reply. "I'm doing well. How about you, Mom?" The message was read almost immediately. A few minutes of silence passed, and then another notification popped up. "Could you tell me how to make that cocoa you gave the children that night?" The moment I read those words, a single tear rolled down my cheek. It wasn't quite an apology, but something deeper. A clumsy, halting first step toward redemption. We can never get back the years we lost, and maybe the wounds will never fully heal. But I believe that from that single cup of cocoa, we've begun walking, slowly but surely, down the long road toward becoming a real family again.